In our previous video on Skinwalker Ranch, we covered 5 of the strange anomalies that the Gorman family witnessed there, and the impact it had on their lives, and what, in the end, drove them out of the farm they loved. In this mini-documentary, rather than focusing on individual anomalies, we look at the whole story, starting from the day the Gormans moved in until the day they moved out, and what happened next. As with the previous video, I'm using the name Gorman rather than the family's real names, and the events I mentioned in detail in the last video will just be noted in the timeline of this story, rather than expanded on. My good friend, filmmaker Jeremy Corbell's new film, Hunt for the Skinwalker, that I mentioned in our previous Skinwalker video, is finally out. Today was the release date, so be one of the first to see it by clicking on the link in the description or in the comments. It's well worth the watch, and no other work on the ranch comes close to the amount of detail he's put into this. If you're looking for a good documentary to watch tonight, then this is the one you want to pick.
It was dead night. Then out of nowhere, that weird flash.
Can you see that? Look at that. That's amazing.
That's not possible. That is not possible.
There is some kind of intelligence operating here.
And you're not allowed to talk about it. This is like the Area 51 of the paranormal.
So many things have happened on the properties that have not been made public.
Going public now.
It is perhaps the most important scientific effort of our time.
The Pentagon and CIA,
They've been investigating encounters with the paranormal at the ranch.
We're talking about unidentified flying objects, UFOs.
The program received more than $20 million for its work.
This is a potential threat, a grave one to our country.
and everybody who lives there knows about it.
Something is here. Something that the government's doing.
Right above my head, and I could hit it with a tennis ball.
The Skinwalker is extraterrestrial.
They should not have vanished, but they vanished.
We are on the eve of something momentous.
Will any of the fingers be pointing toward Skinwalker Ranch?
Skinwalker Ranch is a 480-acre property located just south of Fort Duchesne in Uintah County in the US state of Utah. The ranch land borders the Ute American Reservation, and for over 50 years, the area has experienced and documented all manner of strange phenomenon, including UFOs, paranormal activity, malevolent witches, and terrifying shape-shifting creatures. Whether the Gorman family were aware of this when they bought the ranch is unclear, but they were soon to find out about it in the most terrifying way. In 1994, the Gorman family purchased the ranch at a very reasonable price. It was pretty run down and needed a lot of work, but they were taken in by the breathtaking beauty of its surroundings. The previous owners had not lived in the property for over 7 years and were keen to sell. The Gormans didn't question the strange clause in the real estate contract, which stated that no digging on the land without prior warning to the previous owners was allowed. However, on the day they moved in, Tom, his wife Ellen, and their 2 children had a taste of what was to come when they were confronted by a huge wolf-like creature that, despite being shot several times, would not die. Just a few weeks later, Ellen had another encounter with the bulletproof wolf whilst in her car on the property. This time the creature was accompanied by a dog-like animal that she couldn't identify. Ellen was so concerned that the next day she contacted the local tribe office in Fort Duchesne to see if anything could be done about the wild wolves that seemed to be roaming their property. But she was shocked when she was met with blank stares and silence at the request, and was told nobody owned wolves in the area, and that they had not been seen in the region since the last wolf was shot in Utah in 1929. Ellen, who at the time was infuriated by the response, soon put the wolf incident out of her mind. But her unease soon returned when one evening she was out walking along the top of a ridge when she felt a massive rush of wind pass her. She instinctively thought it was a large bird or possibly a bat, but as she continued walking it happened again, and she sensed whatever it was big. When she looked around to see what it was, it had vanished. Ellen feared that she was becoming paranoid and decided not to tell Tom about the incident. She also chose not to tell him about the strange things that were happening when she was alone in the house. Things were going missing all the time and would turn up in odd places, and she started to think either her mind or her children were playing tricks on her. However, when Tom came in one night and demanded to know who had hidden his post digger, she knew it was not her mind or her children playing tricks, as a post digger weighed 70 pounds. She told Tom the truth and catalogued all the things she had misplaced. This is when alarm bells started to ring and they realised something was not quite right with their new home. But the family persevered, and after a few months, the place was ready to move in Tom's entire herd of high-end Black Angus and Simmental cattle. It was around this time that Tom and Ellen's nephew came to visit, and one evening, Tom and his son Tad and nephew Dave went out to check on the herd, when Tom noticed the headlights of a vehicle in the distance. This wasn't the first time he had spotted what he thought was trespassers on his land, but on this occasion, he decided to go and confront them. All three of them headed in the direction of the lights, but as they approached, the lights started moving away at speed. Tom was concerned the vehicle would plough through his fence lines, so all three of them began to follow the lights. But they soon realised it was not a land vehicle when it suddenly rose a few feet above the ground. As they got closer, it took off and now was in the air. It appeared to be an oblong-shaped craft with a headlight in the front and red lights at the back. It very slowly and silently moved into the distance before finally disappearing over the treetops. They had no idea what they had witnessed, but Dave was so traumatized by the incident that his visit was cut short and his parents banned him from ever setting foot on the ranch again. A few weeks later, Tom and Ellen again witnessed the same craft. This time it made a sound like metal being banged on metal, and as they tried to get closer to it, it took off, slowly moving just in front of them, as if it was watching them, before disappearing, leaving no tracks in the mud. By now, the Gormans were realising that they had made a mistake, and they were also aware of the rumours circulating in the town about the dark history of the ranch, and that the place was off-limits to tribal members, as they believed the land was cursed, although by what, no one would tell them. As winter set in, Tom and Ellen both had disturbing encounters with a slow-moving, silent, triangular-shaped craft that hovered over them, emitting beams of tiny, multicoloured lights. For Ellen, this was followed by the strange sighting of a Darth Vader-type character who was sat in a vehicle outside the house. But these were not the only flying objects that plagued the Gormans. One of the most common occurrences was the strange, unwieldy structures that would appear in the sky. The bizarre orange formations were typically about a mile in the distance, and were seen hovering close to the treetops. On one occasion, Tom studied the structures through a rifle scope, and was astonished to see that in the middle was what looked like another sky that was a distant blue colour, as if it was an opening to another world or dimension. On another occasion, he witnessed a black object emerging from the opening, heading towards him. As it got closer, he could see it was triangular and travelling at tremendous speed before suddenly vanishing into the night sky. This incident in particular convinced Tom that his ranch was the site of some kind of doorway or portal, through which objects from another realm entered into our world. Now, all these incidents were deeply troubling for the family, but probably the most distressing thing was the impact it was having on their livestock. Tom was fiercely protective of his cattle. After all, he was a high-end breeder and was obsessed with the care of his prize herd. So when they started mysteriously disappearing, he was devastated and determined to get to the bottom of it. After one of his most prized Anguses vanished in a snowstorm, he spent almost 24 hours on horseback searching for her. After searching virtually every corner of the ranch, he finally came across some fresh tracks. As he followed them into the bush, it was apparent by the tracks that the animal had started running. She must have been terrified by something, as there were twigs and branches strewn everywhere. But as the tracks entered a clearing, they abruptly stopped. But there was no sign of the cow. The tracks had just ceased, as if the cow had been lifted up as she ran. She had simply vanished, and was never seen again. In another distressing incident, Tom's son was tracking cattle with his dad when he separated from him to round up a stray calf, and he noticed one of their heifers had got stuck in some water and was scrambling up the bank to free herself. After rounding up the calf, he returned to the heifer to rescue her, but he found the animal lying motionless in the water. He was puzzled by this, as the water was not that deep, and he thought it unlikely that she had drowned. But when he checked the animal over, he was horrified and screamed for his dad. Her entire rear end had been carved out with what looked like an extremely sharp instrument. The cut was precise, and the animal's entire insides had been sucked out, but bizarrely, there was not one drop of blood. Sadly, during their time at the ranch, the Gormans had 14 cattle killed or stolen. By now, Ellen was reaching breaking point. The past year in their new home was taking its toll on the whole family. The events were happening thick and fast, and by the end of June 1996, rumours had begun circulating in the town about the goings-on at the ranch, and people were taking an interest in it. The final straw for the family was when Tom's 3 beloved dogs were chased and pulverised by an orb, which we talked about in our other video. After 20 months, the Gormans admitted defeat. They unanimously decided to sell the ranch. But Tom wasn't completely ready to give up on the ranch. He wanted answers, and within a couple of weeks of the sale of the ranch, Tom decided to take a job as the Nids ranch manager. He kept a few of his own cows on the property, and Nids purchased about a dozen more that were basically to be used as bait. He had moved his family 25 miles away to a new ranch, and they had settled in and felt safe. He travelled back and forth every day to the ranch to help with the ongoing Nids investigation. In the autumn of 1996, the Nids team started their investigation, and whatever had terrorised the Gorman family now had to face an experienced scientific team who was intent on getting to the bottom of the phenomenon. These guys had high-tech equipment, and if anyone would get firm evidence of what was going on, it would be the Nids team. Members of the team, that included a physicist and a vet, moved into an observation trailer parked on the site, and every night they observed. On September the 16th, 1996, their vigilance paid off when unexplained lights were spotted hovering over the cotton trees. All those that witnessed it agreed that the lights' movement were unlike anything any of them had seen before, and unanimously agreed it was an unidentified object. However, it fell short of the phenomenon Tom had been describing, and the photos they managed to take were disappointing, showing nothing more than a distant light. This was the first of many anomalies witnessed at the ranch by the team over the next 8 years, and during this time they interviewed locals and tribe members who told of similar weird events in and around the area, including cattle mutilations, multiple coloured balls of light, and large triangular flying objects. But very few of them wanted to be identified or associated with what they had considered a curse. During the very cold weather, the teams moved out but stayed on call, leaving just Tom to manage the livestock left on the ranch. And in January 1997, Tom called the Nids team to say 3 of his calves had been attacked in their corral. When the Nids vet arrived, he discovered one of the calves had its ear shredded, as if by shears, and the other 2 had small round holes punctured in their eyelids. These wounds were unlike anything they had seen before. Just 2 months later, Tom found the mutilated calf that was described in the previous video, whose entire body cavity was missing. Over the next few months and years, mostly in the presence of Tom Gorman, the phenomenon still plagued the ranch. But in truth, it only seemed to be visible to him and his wife on the rare occasions he revisited the ranch after the family left. And although the Nids team were convinced something even they couldn't understand was happening there, most of the incidents they witnessed were very isolated and open to interpretation, and the only credible one, when someone other than the Gormans witnessed, is the one from Mike from the Nids team, when he encountered what I explained in detail in the other video. So after 8 years of fairly intense investigation by the Nids team, ultimately they were unsuccessful in trying to measure or prove the existence of anything. So that poses the following questions. Was it real? Was it all a hoax? Or was whatever it was only targeting Tom Gorman and his family? Skeptics will probably go with the hoax story, although those who know and met the Gormans refuse to believe they are the type of family to make such things up. After all, they had no clue about the past strange phenomenon at the ranch before they moved in. They only learned about it after things started happening to them, and locals started gossiping. The Nids team did experience some strange things at the ranch, like I said. It's just they couldn't back any of them up scientifically or explain them, so in effect could not prove anything. So could a natural phenomenon be responsible for the events? For example, the presence of seismic, electromagnetic, or other environmental variables that induce hallucinations in the human brain and alter the perception of those in close proximity to the region, in particular the Gormans. Then there is the advanced terrestrial civilization theory and claim that an isolated group of humans from way back in time gained advanced technology and isolated themselves from the rest of the world, and have controlled world human affairs ever since. Or are extraterrestrials responsible? Now this is our favourite theory, of course. Aliens from another planet have made the ranch their base to study humans and carry out experiments on animals. A lot of what the Gormans experienced, including UFOs, portals, animal mutilations, and bizarre observations of the family through orbs, all points to what we are led to believe is alien observation. But maybe a more plausible explanation could be that the military chose the site to test their newest ultra-secret toys, which may include military camouflage, assassination techniques, psychological warfare, drones, and holographic technology. But why would they test these systems on an innocent family, unless they were handpicked as the least likely to make a fuss? This seems unlikely, as this kind of program would be highly illegal, and a violation of civil rights. So could it be possible that the Native American Utes were right all along, and the phenomenon is the work of the Skinwalker curse? There is no doubt that the locals in the area are convinced of this, but the question is, what do you think? I hope you've enjoyed this mini documentary on the Skinwalker Ranch. Don't forget to check out my friend's documentary, Hunt for the Skinwalker, to learn a ton more about the terrifying events that have plagued the ranch since day one. I think all of you will love it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.